I thought he was God. He was 6'4" and had this dramatic appearance. But he had something else. He had a very clear vision of where he was going and what he wanted.
For decades, Earl had helped keep General Motors on top, with Chevrolet outselling Ford almost every year. He had started out in the 1920s, designing cars for Hollywood celebrities. And at GM, brought that same sweeping feel of glamour to cars for regular folks. The Earl look could be described in 3 words: longer, lower, wider. Over the years, he got rid of running boards, sunk headlights into the fenders, and revolutionized bumper design. Earl went crazy with color and chrome and pursued his vision with an ego as big as any movie star.
Were you ever in Harley's office? This office was longer than this house. It was all old English, very heavy English design. He had his desk on a dais at the end. So when you walked in there, by the time you got at the end of that thing, you were like this. You're a blithering idiot. And he did it on purpose. Anybody came in there with a gripe or gonna, you know, stand up to Harley, no way. By the time you got down there, you were like that, see.
Harley Earl once fired an employee for wearing a necktie identical to his and insisted that all of his 650 subordinates call him Mr. Earl.
He'd come in the studio, you know, and he'd plunk his big frame down in a chair and he'd put his arms out and he'd say, "Now, fellas, here's what I want you to do. See that line? Lower that a 1/16 of an inch." He was so imposing, and he told me that one time, and I went up there and I was shaking so hard I couldn't get that line right, but he stayed on that until he got exactly what he felt was right.
Earl was also a gifted corporate infighter, the only vice president on a first-name basis with Alfred P. Sloan, the head of General Motors.
He had a mandate from Mr. Sloan. He was Mr. Sloan's man. He was more important than the engineers, than the manufacturing man. And if Engine Charlie Wilson or Harlow Curtis ever challenged him on a car, I mean, they'd say, they might be in a drawing room and Harlow Curtis might say, "Well, I don't think I agree with that." And he'd just pick up the phone and he'd dial New York and he'd say, "Alfred, Harley Earl here. Now I've got,
Earl's job was to get customers out of the perfectly good car they were driving into a new one. He did it by making the car in our driveway seem hopelessly out of date, tempting us with new car designs every year.
Well, Harley Earl understood that the car was fashion. He understood that you could artificially induce demand by making the public perceive that they should want the newest.
Here's the car that's almost too new to be true. The 1958 Chevrolet.
To change the car every year was our goal. We loved it.
They were outrageous. They were ridiculous. They were crazy. They made no sense at all on a practical level. But people loved them. People yearned for them.
They were all different. The fins were different. The side trim was different. In the 50s, you could tell a Chevy from a Ford from a Plymouth at 100 yards.
One I'm thinking of in particular was a Chevrolet, and they had like a kind of a diagonal design on the side.
The Mercury Turnpike Cruiser. I remember that one.
My very first car was a 1958 Cadillac. It was pink with a white top.
Harley Earl was shameless about adding sexual symbols to his cars. Cadillac sprouted bumpers that came to be known as Dagmars, after a bosomy TV starlet. Phallic ornaments and chrome crevices soon appeared everywhere. In the midst of this design orgy, one company tried a bold new approach. With no Harley Earl on its payroll, Ford was desperate to find something, anything, that would edge out the competition.
Watch this.
In the mid-1950s, almost 40,000 people a year died in car accidents.
Know what's in this barrel? A teacup. One fragile teacup. Let's see what happened to it.
So Ford decided to market a car with safety as the selling point.
Not even a crack.
Meet one of the busiest men in town. He sells 56 Fords.
And that's not all. In addition to Fords, I sell safety, like this new lifeguard steering wheel. It acts as a cushion on impact. You can have the instrument panel and sun visors padded for additional safety. And lifeguard seat belts, a Ford option that keeps you firmly in your seat in case of sudden stops.
And we made a determined effort. This wasn't just put your toe in the water. We really advertised the hell out of this and promoted it. Mr. and Ms. America weren't ready for us.
Well, the American consumer could care less. I mean, the American consumer did not want to be reminded that you might die in a car.
I used to get letters from women saying, get those seatbelts out of my car. They're lumpy because when I sit on them, the buckles. I said, well, you're supposed to fasten them, you know?
And when Ford tried to sell a car based upon some modest safety innovations, it just fell flat on its face because people wanted sex and glamour, and General Motors was giving it to them.
The 50s would be defined not by the safety belt, but by a Harley Earl design feature which contributed nothing but glitz. It was called the fin.
Wow, another new Chrysler. That rear end looks just like a jet plane.
Some manufacturers claimed that fins made their cars aerodynamic, but most people just liked the way they looked. Car makers rushed to copy the fin. Kaiser even put them on its little Henry J. Then Chevy turned the fin sideways. Rumor had it that the gull-wing tail of the '59 Chevy would make the car airborne at high speeds.
Detroit always overreacts. When one guy did the fins, the other guy did bigger fins. And before you know it, they were chrome, big yachts, boats.
The emphasis on style over substance would someday come back to haunt the American makers and the American car buyers who had cheered them on.
The consumer was very, very interested in glitz. The consumer wanted this. The consumer encouraged the auto industry in the pursuit of the annual model changeover that was just superficial design. I mean, Harley Earl tapped into the American psyche. He understood it.
The peak of tail fins was 1959 on the Cadillac, when the fins were, I believe, measured at 40 inches off the ground. And they were as pointy as a dagger. And there were many stories, I think probably mostly apocryphal, about roller skaters and pedestrians being impaled on these fins.
The high-tailed '59 was Harley Earl's last caddy before retirement. 5,000 pounds, 345 horsepower, 7 feet wide, and 19 feet long.
Cadillac convertible was just the most exciting car I've ever owned. But with the top down, I'd be driving along and I'd think there was somebody following me over on my right-hand side. And I look around and it's the fin. You can look back and analyze the thing. I just got to tell you, at the time, it was the right thing to do.